Okay. Welcome everyone to our team call tonight. We have Lisa here who's going to be talking about John Maxwell's book, and we're so excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So we'll mute ourselves, or do you want us to be?
Actually, we can interact a little bit, so you don't
Okay.
have, if you feel like you need to mute yourself, go right ahead, but you don't have to. Well, hello everyone. Is everyone from Connecticut? Is everyone on the call?
I live in Mass.
Okay, what part of Mass?
I'm near Sturbridge.
Me too. I'm in Charlton.
Oh, I'm in Warren.
Oh, okay. We're like neighbors.
Awesome. Yeah.
So everyone else from the Connecticut area?
No, Central Massachusetts.
Okay. All right, cool. And then, so I'm originally from Branford, Connecticut.
Okay.
We transplanted here like 7 years ago. Actually, we transplanted to Sturbridge and then Auburn and then Leicester and now Charleston. I used to work, well, I still do. I work at Indiana College part-time. I was the dean of students there until my daughter was born, and then I decided it was time to stay home and be with her a little bit. So, and my husband owns his own company, so he's all over Connecticut and Massachusetts. So we're kind of, we're all over both states. So a little bit about what me and how I got here and why I'm talking, like what qualifies me to really be talking to you about John Maxwell's book and personal development in general. I'll tell you a little bit about my journey with personal development, and then we'll kind of get into the book a little bit. Oh my goodness, forever ago, like I want to say 14 years ago, I started in higher education, working at the University of New Haven. So if anyone knows UNH at all, I was in student activities there, and I was like young and not very smart at the time. And they told me, here, you're running a leadership development program. And I was like, cool, I can do this, whatever. And I couldn't, well, I could, but like, I was like, what do I do? So I needed to figure out how to do it. Somebody I knew introduced me to a book by Dr. Tim Moore, which was great because it actually like kind of guided me through the process of teaching these kids leadership. And on like day 2 of this book, of course I didn't prepare. I kind of went in and started reading, and I was reading this passage to them, and it was called The Starving Baker. It was the image of a starving baker. And it talked about how this guy had opened this bakery and had all these great snacks and treats, and the line was out the door every day. And as the years went on, he kind of started, or as the weeks went on, they started to notice that he was losing a lot of weight. He was kind of becoming frail, and the author of the book says how he went in and he sat and he watched this baker going back and forth all day, and he was feeding all these people, but he was never feeding himself. And as I'm reading this to my students, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is me. Like, I am totally like trying to feed these students, but I'm not feeding myself, like actually physically, but also like I'm not learning about what leadership is. I'm just using whatever material people are handing me, and I'm going. I need to learn what leadership is before I can, and I need to feed myself and develop my own self before I can develop them. So that put me on a quest to search for books. And that's when I first came across John Maxwell. The first book of John Maxwell's I read was The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So if anyone knows John Maxwell, he has written, I can't even tell you how many books, over 100 books. And he's sold 26 million copies of his books so far. And actually he has another book coming out, I think in January. So he's got a lot of information out there. And he does a lot with personal development and leadership development. So fast forward a lot of years, and I told you guys I left my position at Anna Maria College when my daughter was born, and I decided to stay home. And I had been working in higher education for 12 years, and it was my career was my life. So after being home with her for 2 years, I suddenly discovered, okay, where's God? Like, what happened to me, just me? And I said, I need to start personally developing again. I mean, I was personally developing. I was learning how to, care for an infant, which I never knew how to do. I didn't know there were so many different things that were out there. When we had her, I was like, I used to babysit. I got this. And then we came home with this baby, and I was like, what do I do now? So about a couple, maybe or 8 months back, I was trying to figure out my next path. And I was looking into doing life coaching and things like that. And I was starting to read different leadership books again. And quite by accident, I guess, but not really, because, targeted marketing on Facebook. The John Maxwell team popped up on my Facebook feed as an ad. And I just clicked into it, and I did a little research, and I actually got this book that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. I got it on not on Audible. It's on Libby. I love the library app. If anyone's ever used Libby, it's a library app where you can borrow audiobooks instead of having to pay for them on Audible. So I got this particular book, and did some more research and decided to join the John Maxwell team. So the John Maxwell team trains leaders, speakers, and trainers to work with John's materials. So I started working with his materials a couple months back, and I'm really excited to be able to share a part of this particular book with you guys. If you haven't noticed, I'm Italian. I talk with my hands a lot. So I'm going to share with you guys 2 of the laws that John talks about in his book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. We're going to discuss the law of pain and the law of the rubber band. I actually have a little rubber band here as a demonstration. We can't touch on all of personal growth because, there's so much of it, and in a short time, we wouldn't be able to cover everything. If you actually Google personal growth, I actually did it a little while ago, and I came up with 1.4 million entries on personal growth on Google. So we couldn't really touch on all of it today, but we'll get into a little bit of it, and what better way to do it than using John's material, who is the #1 speaker and writer on personal growth and personal development and leadership development. So we're going to talk a little bit about the law of pain first. Who likes pain? I can guarantee you none of us like pain. Did anyone raise their hand and say they like pain? No. I don't like pain. And none of us like to be in pain. The law of pain says that good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. And it is necessary to grow. So in order to grow, we must be able to manage our pain well. The law is a tough pill to swallow because none of us really like pain. But this law teaches you and I how to turn bad experiences into positive ones. John quotes, in his book, John quotes John McDonnell in this chapter when he says, every problem introduces a person to himself. So every problem that we have introduces us a little bit more to who we are. And it helps us to grow and learn more about who we are just by how we handle it and how we get through it. The bottom line with this law is that everyone has bad experiences. We can't avoid bad experiences. We can't avoid bad times. We'd all like every time to be wonderful and happy and cheery, but unfortunately, we can't avoid the fact that we're going to come across some bad things in our lives. There are 3 types of people, 3 types of ways that we handle pain when we come across them. We either run from it, we do everything we can to just get through it, or we embrace it and we learn from it. Those who embrace it and learn from it are the leaders who are using the pain to change their lives. So I will actually never forget the first time I was asked to speak. I had just started working at the University of New Haven. I was probably there less than a week. And my boss, it was during orientation. And anyone who has college kids or had college kids and had to sit through orientation, through parent orientation, I know how wonderful it is. My boss says to me, I'm busy. Can you go introduce the provost to the parents? I had never even met the provost yet. I was literally like 24 years old, shaking as hard as I could. I don't even think we've actually physically met. I'm 4'11", so I'm short. I get up on this stage and I walk up to the podium where the microphone is, and I go to speak, and the microphone is above my head. Pain. Like, I was like literally humiliated. Like, that was the pain for me. And I'm standing there and I'm going, what do I do? And my students, who I'd only known for a couple days too, were in the front row giggling. And so I quickly, I don't know how I did this, but how I thought of this so quickly, but I moved the microphone to the side of the podium, and I introduced the provost, and I moved the microphone back, and I quickly got off that stage. My students every so often still tag me in that picture they took of me on that stage all these years later. But I will never forget like how humiliated I was in that moment. But I found a way to get through it, and I found a way to learn from it. I laughed at it when I got up. When I moved the microphone over, I made a joke about my height. I also made a joke about, you probably all think I'm a student, but I really do work here. And everybody laughed, and we got through it, and and it helped me to grow. I used that joke all the time, and actually, I think it was even at that particular group's graduation. They all brought it up again. They were all laughing at, like, remember that time when you had to move the microphone over? I think they ended up making me a step stool after that, so I can actually reach the podium. But that was a moment for me that I could have been humiliated and walked off that stage, or I could have taken that pain and learned from it and done something with it. And I chose to do something with it. And that's what we need to do. We need to find those moments of pain and figure out how to turn them into good experiences that we can learn from. We've all had bad experiences. We've heard the saying, life is full of ups and downs. We always want ups. We do everything in our power to avoid bad situations, yet they always find us. It's hard to take it one day at a time when we feel like the day has just totally attacked us. And who's felt that way even in the past month? I know I have. I've felt that way in the past week. It's true that no one likes bad experiences, but if we learn to manage those bad experiences, then we get good out of them. Plus, you have great war stories to tell from those bad experiences. Some people take the should have, would have, and could have path when dealing with bad experiences. Consider some of the types of pain that we face every day or all the time. The pain of incompetence. I should have seen this coming. I know we've all experienced that moment in our life when you're looking at something and going, oh my goodness, I should have known this was going to come. And that pain of like, I should have done something before it happened. The pain of financial loss. If I can only get it back. I know for us, we've put money into things in the past that just didn't work out. And that financial loss finances can always be a pain. But when you lose that and you think, oh my goodness, if I could just get what I had back. The pain of not being number one. I would be at the top if it wasn't for such and such a person. I'd be the leader. I'd be the one running the show if it wasn't for someone. And then the pain of change. That feeling of, if they just listen to me, they don't know what they're doing. If they just listen to me, we could get this done. And so on. There are so many different types of pain that we go through. We know that very few people can take positive experiences and make them can take negative experiences and make them into positive ones. Many people become bitter, and having bad experiences over and over can make people become more bitter. Few people can become better from their pain. I want to help you guys to become better from your painful experiences. So what can we do to actually live that? Like, how can we actually live those moments? What I've just shared with you are just a few examples of what John calls the pain files. The pain of incompetence, the pain of not being number one, and so on. But just because we have pain in our files doesn't mean that we should ignore them. It doesn't mean we should just put our pain aside and like try to ignore the fact that it ever existed. We need to keep those files so we can remember and grow from those experiences. Looking back on those pains and how we dealt with them can help us to become better people and to turn those pains into gains. We do this by choosing a positive life stance. By this, I mean we need to look for positive lessons in every experience. There is always something positive, but you may not see it. At times it could be really hard to find the positive in things. I know even now, the mornings that my daughter's up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, oh my goodness, like what, like, God, just make her go to sleep. I just want to sleep through a night. I joke all the time that I haven't slept through a night since I got pregnant with her. My pregnancy started with like terrible nightmares for like 3 months and then heartburn for the rest of it. And then she hasn't slept through a night since she's been born. She actually, for a while, would get up at 10 minutes to 3 every morning, and then we made it to 10 minutes to 4. And I keep trying to think to myself, what lesson am I learning from this? Like, what am I gaining from this? And then a couple of months back, I said to myself, well, if I'm going to be up anyway, maybe I should work out when I'm up anyway. So I started getting up at 4:30 and hopping on the treadmill and running 2 miles. And I actually started like getting ready before everybody else in the house was fully up. She knows now she has to stay in her room until she has a wake up clock. She's supposed to stay in her room until her light turns green. It doesn't always work, but you know. So I can actually, I've taken that experience of, I was never a morning person. I was totally a night owl. I worked until midnight every night. And now I've turned around what I now experience with my daughter and turned it into something that I can actually gain from. So I'm actually getting to work out again. For a while, I wasn't working out at all. Melissa would message me and be like, hey, like, how you doing? And I'd be like, I haven't worked out in months. Or I'd see like posts online about people running and I'm like, I miss running so much. And I finally ran a 5-mile race in September and I'm so proud of myself for doing it again. But it took me a lot to get back there. I actually broke my foot last year. I had every excuse in the book. I was working on my master's degree. It was just every excuse in the book. And I finally got back there and I do miss sleep, but I try to get to bed early. So, you know, you take the good with the bad. One way to embrace and develop from our pain is to develop our creativity. Neil Donald Walsh says, life begins at the end of our comfort zone. That's always a little hard for me to swallow at first. Like, life begins at the end of the current. Like, I like to stay in my comfort zone sometimes. Like, I just want to be comfortable and like not get out of that box. But we don't become more unless we stretch outside of that comfort zone. We use the gift of the bad experiences to open our minds and to challenge ourselves to use our creativity. So I used the waking up at ridiculous hours to be creative and think about what I could do in that time, and finally got back to working out. So we have to use our creativity to find the good in those bad situations. Embrace the value of your bad experiences. You have a choice. You can look at the bad experiences in life and set back from them, or you can learn from them. It's been said that in life there are winners and losers. Aside from the final score of a sporting event, I would say for leaders, there are winners and learners. We can always learn from experiences, not lose from them. This actually reminds me of my aunt. I look at the bad experiences she went through in her life and how she always found something good in them. She, when I was very young, was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and she was in the hospital for a very long time. But as soon as she got out of the hospital, she found every way to make the best out of life. The fact that we had to go to Boston for a doctor's appointment she had to be in Boston for a doctor's appointment meant we got to go see a show in Boston or out to some restaurant that she really wanted to try. Or, and then when I was in college, she was diagnosed with cancer. She actually was treated at Sloan Kettering in New York City. And when we had to go to New York, we got to see a Broadway show. She would find ways to take the bad days and find something good in them. She always lived life to its fullest, right up to the very last moment. I remember like coming home, she didn't want me to know that how sick she really was at times. And she would always put a smile on her face and be showing, she actually lost her sight at one point from, she had a brain tumor. She would be showing me, she was a jeweler. She would be showing me jewelry and I'm like, she can't even see it, but like she'd find a way to be describing something gorgeous to me, even though she was going through this rough experience. She always found this great stuff, like this way of making it okay. And I always remember that when I think like, when I'm going through a bad day, I'm like, my goodness, like, she went through really bad days when she had to get a wig. She was also a hairdresser. She was really into girly stuff. When she had to shave her head and get a wig, she took me with her and I got a hair clip too. And like, we got matching wigs. Like she made it fun. She made fun experiences out of the stuff that was negative. And I always think back to that when I think of bad experiences. I'm like, if she can get through this, so can I. It also reminds me of, I was set to run a 5-mile race on Father's Day weekend down in Brantford where I grew up. And the night before I was in Memphis, Tennessee at St. Jude's Children's Hospital at a conference, and I was set to fly back that day. My flight got canceled and I didn't get in until 2 a.m. And as I'm running, I'm thinking, if those kids could get through the night being that sick, I can get through 5 miles. So I think of like that was like, one of those bad experiences where every flight you try to get on is canceled and you're like, this is the worst day ever. And then you have to think of like, how can I turn this into a good? I think that was the only time I ran that entire race because it's always the hottest race of the year. But I ran through the entire thing and pushed it right to the end. One of the biggest pushes we get forward from bad experiences is making good changes after we learn from the bad experiences. A bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you don't make the turn. What happens to us is rarely the end of the road. However, many of us focus on our feelings about what has happened to us rather than focusing on our thoughts and actions that could lead to a better direction. The next time you are faced with a bad experience, remember yourself that you are on the cusp of change. Check your emotions and use them to be a catalyst for change and growth. Don't let them paralyze you. Now let me give you one more thing to think about when it relates to the law of pain, directly connecting it to leadership. In other words, how do we lead from the law of pain? How do you apply this law specifically to your life? So let's look at applying the law specifically to your life. There are several questions you can explore, but but we have limited time. So let me give you a few to think about. How do you deal with pain? How do you do anything and everything possible to avoid it? Or do you endure it since you know you have to get through it? Or do you work to embrace it and remain positive despite the bad experience? We all know people who are doing all of these things. We know people who are avoiding it. We know people who are working through it. And we know people who are learning from it. And sometimes when we're avoiding it, we look at those people who are learning from it and we're like, why can't we be more like them? It's all up to us. We have to make that decision to turn that pain into gain. Think about where you are on the spectrum and how you view bad experiences. We know that getting an understanding of what is happening and recognizing that the emotions you have because of these experiences is the start to creating positive actions and change. There are numerous ways you can go forward when you look at pain. Here are a few things you can do. Get input from others. You can ask others, how can I turn this into something good? Understand your emotions. I think that one's always a hard one because when you're in these emotions, it's hard to understand them. I like to sit and I reflect. I'll sit and I'll write everything down. I'll journal for a little while. I actually have it set in my phone that like 5 minutes after my daughter goes to bed that I will sit and journal for 20 minutes to get those whatever emotions are going on out on paper or whatever's going on in my head at the moment. Identify specific desires to change that you want. So be specific. How do you want to change? How can you take something negative and how do you want to make it positive? Think about what positive change you you can influence, either in yourself or others. How can you positively change yourself? All of the above remind us that personal growth requires action. If you haven't been acting when you have a bad experience, then you're simply avoiding it. Personal growth requires action. It is that simple, and it's that difficult as well. Sometimes action can be more difficult than we want it to be. Don't let another painful experience go by without learning and growing from it. So next time you have a painful experience, make sure that you're taking that time to think about it and think about how you can make it a positive one. All right, so I'm going to switch gears to the next law. We're going to look at the law of the rubber band. So like I said before, I brought my rubber band. The thesis for this law is growth stops when you lose tension between where you are and where you want to be. I also think about this when I think about when I read this chapter several times. I think about as he's talking about the rubber band. I also think about stretching. Like I can't get myself to the next level with my running until I'm stretching and feeling good about it. So you can, when you're thinking about the rubber band, that's another way I think about it is stretching my muscles, not just a rubber band. If you ask the question, do you want to grow? If you were asked the question, do you want to grow? How would you respond? I believe it would be a resounding yes, I want to grow. But the truth of the matter is that most of us, we avoid growth because we don't want to feel uncomfortable. You can see we have been taught to be in a comfortable place, and we desire and strive to be comfortable. I mean, everybody wants to be comfortable. Like, who wants to come home at night after a long day of work and get into our comfy clothes and like relax? Like, we all want to be comfortable, and stretching and growing can be a little hard sometimes. I'm going to introduce you to a new thought. Here it goes. All living things grow, and growth requires stretching. John says that true life begins at the end of our comfort zone, and we arrive there by stretching. So I have it's kind of a little game or a little thought process for all of you. I want you to think of a rubber band, like the one I have here. What uses can you guys think of a rubber band? Anyone could just like jump in and shout something.
Like putting papers together?
Putting papers together, yep. What else? Anything else that you...
Laps at a race.
What's that?
Counting laps.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Think of a rubber band, uses for a rubber band?
Hitting someone in the face.
Yes, you have to do this first, though. I'd like to do that to some of my students some days when they're falling asleep in class.
You can put your hair up with it, although I wouldn't suggest it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I just bought a whole bunch of these fabric bands that are for my daughter, but they fit my hair better.
I love the fabric ones.
They're so nice. And they don't pull all my hair out when I take them out.
I know, right?
So when you think about all these uses of a rubber band, rubber bands are only useful when we stretch them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We can only really use them when we're stretching them, even when we're hitting someone in the face, right?
The stretchier, the
I don't
better.
do that often. I just...
I don't believe you.
I'm a freshman.
Watch out.
Do you know how many out of 20 freshmen are actually falling asleep in class? And they all tell me it's because they had 5 a.m. practice. I'm like, really? You came here because you wanted to play. Now let's actually learn to. You would not be where you were if you didn't stretch from where you once were. For many, the thought is when I graduate from high school or college, I don't have to grow anymore. I'm done. I'm done learning. I'm done stretching. I'm done doing all that that stuff. But the truth is that we need to continue to stretch to grow in our lives. But growth comes with discomfort and initially pain. I'll never forget when I started running. I actually started running because my grad school roommate was a track runner, and we would run next to each other on the trail. We'd go to the gym together, and she'd be running the weekend treadmill, and we'd get back to our apartment, and she'd be making fun of other people on the other treadmills. And I was like, oh, I have to keep up. This is embarrassing. So I will never forget those shin splints from the first couple months of running. So we have to stretch, and it's initially painful. What we felt in school was that we had to get through, when we were in school, we had to get to the diploma, we had to get to that graduation day. We stretched and stretched and stretched. So it was we did what we had to do to get by. Some of us strived to get doing what we did to get by or needed to get by. Some of us that meant all A's. Some of us, for me, meant I just need to get past this class to get through to the next one. But we all did what we had to do to get by. We stretched far enough to get to the next place, to get to that graduation day. Perhaps some of you like me, all I wanted to do was to get through school. I wanted to just be done with it. And don't ask me how I then decided to do 2 master's degrees. Don't know. After all, when, where and when will I use any of that stuff anyway? Seriously, I don't know when I'm going to use half the stuff. I was a music major in college. I am not a musician anymore. I played the clarinet for 11 years. I'm not going to use any of that stuff anymore. But really, where was I going to use that stuff? One of my favorite quotes of all times is, God's gift to us is potential, and our gift to God is developing our potential. So what do we do to do that? It's simple. We get out of our comfort zone. By continually stretching, not only physically, but emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. John gives us 7 benefits to tension that I would like to share with you. Now, time doesn't permit me to go into and exploring every one into length, but here's a quick overview of them. Bear with me for a second. Few people ever want to be stretched. It is literally like saying to your employer, I know I'm overqualified, and I promise I will only use half of my ability. Most people use only a fraction of their ability and rarely, if ever, try to reach their full potential. David Godin claims that only 32% of the American population has ever been in a bookstore. Really? 32% of Americans have ever been in a bookstore? That's so alarming to me, because we're not willing to read and to learn and to grow. So many, I'm always telling my students that you need to read, and they're like, I don't want to read. So I tell them to get audiobooks, because that's what I do now. I listen in the car or when I'm doing dishes. But so many people don't want it. They don't read unless they have to. And that's the way with 90% of my students in my classroom. They're only reading when they absolutely have to. But we have so many new things out there that we can do. We have podcasts, we have audiobooks. We can find things that we can do without having to sit down and actually find the time to read a book. Settling for status quo. Most people are satisfied with settling in their comfort zone. And they like the habits that they're in. Being in a comfort zone may feel good and safe, but it will lead to mediocrity and ultimately dissatisfaction. It really takes courage to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. No one remembers average people. Stretching is an inside job. The real process of growth begins with your thoughts. Those thoughts then become words. Those words then become actions. James Allen says, you cannot travel within and stand still without. Think about it. All life, except for mankind, grows to its full potential. Think about a tree. A tree doesn't decide when it's going to stop growing. It continues to grow to its full potential. Mankind is the only one of life that can say, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to grow anymore. The inside job is an internal measurement that allows you to evaluate where you are against what you are capable of. So we're all capable of more. We just have to get there. We just have to be willing to stretch and go there. Stretching requires change. Change is always a challenge because it propels us out of our place of comfort. Just a couple of real truths I would like to share with you. You can't improve and avoid change at the same time. We must stop looking over our shoulder at what was and start focusing on what is. A lot of times we look back and we're like, oh, but it used to be that way. Like, I wish it could be the old way, but we need to stop doing that and realize, like, here we are, and now we need to focus on this. Find what interests you. If I find what interests me, sorry, totally lost my notes. I find it interesting that you are usually will not find a successful person who isn't restless in some way. A quote by George Eliot: "It is never too late to be what you might have been." If you are still satisfied with what you did 5 years ago, then you're not growing. Stretching sets you apart from others. Have you noticed that people seem to become satisfied with mediocrity? I noticed this I teach first year seminar. So this is all like, I'm teaching them habits for success and how to be successful in college. And I had them write goals a couple weeks ago. And I can't tell you how many wrote goals that I just want to get a C in all my classes. They're fine with just passing. They're fine with mediocrity. They're not pushing themselves. This is about personal concession, and it's to be less than our best. I find it so interesting that excellence seems to be further and further away from the accepted norms of society. Successful people set themselves apart from the crowd by going over and above what others do. As you stretch, you get better, and you will be able to affect others to become better as well. I try to get in front of my classroom every time I teach, and I start the class with like an upbeat song, and I try to like get them motivated. Getting ourselves motivated, I notice in some of them, also motivates others. Not all of them, but not the kid who's sleeping in the corner. Once we become better, we can make others better. I notice that, and those of you who have children, I notice if I walk in my daughter's room first thing in the morning and I am happy and excited, she's happy and excited too. If I walk in the room and I'm like half asleep, she's cranky and crying and whiny, and the whines don't stop all day. I quite often ask her if she wants wine with her cheese on those days, because she doesn't stop. But I feel it. I know that when I'm in a good mood, so is she, and that it rubs off on each other. When she's feeling gross, sometimes so am I, because I'm home and we're both feeling yucky. But those good feelings rub off on each other. Stretching can become a lifestyle. When you stop stretching, you stop growing, and perhaps even stop completely in some ways. I, for one, am going to continue stretching. I continue to listen to podcasts almost every day, or books either in the car, or I try to find spots in that I was doing something that I could be doing something else, like doing the dishes. I can throw on my headphones and listen to a book, folding laundry, all those things that I have to do that I don't like doing, but I have to do anyway. I can use those times for personal growth. I can use those times to stretch myself. And I can use those times to make more out of them. So I continue to try to stretch and grow daily, as much as I can. Stretching gives you a shot at significance. You see, if you are going to grow yourself, you must first know yourself. So I know when I really get into personal development, I start to learn more about myself. So when we stretch and we grow, we learn more about who we are. And that teaches us more about who we can become and who we want to become. Sometimes we don't even know those things. I know first becoming a mother, I kind of lost who I was for a little while. I forgot about me, and I had to rediscover who I wanted to become. I knew I didn't want to go back into the 90-hour weeks that I was doing prior to having my daughter. I was working 90-hour weeks, and I was on call 24/7, so I could be called in at 2:00 in the morning, and going into this whole personal development journey has made me realize that's not what I want anymore. So we have to learn more about ourselves in order to stretch and grow. John says, I want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference at a time that makes a difference with people who make a difference. People who are committed to stretching themselves will make a difference. The first time I heard John say that, I had to listen to it twice. So I'm going to read it to you again. He says, I want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference at a time that makes a difference with people who make a difference. Not everyone wants to make a difference. So we have to also find people and surround ourselves with people who are also growing and stretching. We tend to be more like the people that we surround ourselves with. So finding other people who want to make a difference and want to change and want to grow, it helps us to grow as well. The real bottom line of the law of the rubber band is that you're always looking for a better way to do what you're already doing. There are times when you're like, oh, I got this. Don't, this phrase, don't change, if it works, what is it? If it works, don't fix it. You can find a better, there's always ways to find better ways to do something. So stretching means finding better ways to do what you're already doing. The law of the rubber band is one of my favorites because as I live it out, I am never the same, but I'm getting better. As you deal with your day-to-day situations, whether they're business or personally related, you are going to have several painful experiences. How you choose to deal with them determines how you positively or negatively impact the circumstances and influence those around you. What I'm saying is when life gives you lemons, remember the tension of the rubber band and use those lemons to make lemonade. So that's just kind of an overview of those two laws. Does anyone have any questions or want to pipe in with anything? I think I have to say, like, Melissa, I'm so glad that I think we met through Runner, right? Through the 169 group.
Mm-hmm. I think so, yeah.
And I brought John Maxwell up to her. She was like, yes, I love reading his books. I was like,
I love him.
I found someone who loves him as much as I do. So like, it's funny how like we found each other through a running group, and we've actually probably never, I don't know if we've ever run.
No.
I don't think so.
Not yet.
Yeah, so I actually haven't run a race in Connecticut in a while. The last race I ran was up here in Mass. So I need to get back down and do some of my knock off some of my towns. But it's funny how like you come across people when you're doing these things and you want to grow and you want to learn, you come across people who are on the same path as you. Even if it's just through Facebook Messenger every so often.
Yeah, he just wrote that Power of Five, which is fantastic. It's for us.
Yeah. It's, I mean, he actually just did. I don't know if anyone's does anything with essential oils, but he was the keynote speaker at a Young Living conference a couple weeks ago. And I don't know if anyone reads Rachel Hollis books or listens to the rest.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
They just spoke at the same conference like last week, because I was actually listening to a live call with him, oh my goodness, maybe Thursday of last week, and he was talking about speaking with Rachel. I love Rachel Hollis. That's actually the podcast I listen to when I run.
Yeah, I listen to her a lot.
Awesome. But anyone have any questions or want to throw anything in there that I missed? Something I can learn and grow from? Okay, so I'm just gonna wrap up really quickly. As I close, you can see that I'm really passionate about this stuff. I know I have my notes, but that's because I need to like refer back to things. So I'm sorry if I'm like looking down every so often, but it's a lot of information to swallow. It's been an honor to talk with you guys. Melissa, thank you so much for inviting me to come share this with all of you. As I told you in the beginning, personal growth and development has really made a difference in my life. And I'm kind of like, I've kind of gotten to be, I actually said I did a Facebook Live cast the other day for a group, for a friends group, and I was talking about personal growth, and I said sometimes I have to like scale myself back because I do too. I was using the reference of the starving baker. I said I feed myself too much. I'm getting fat on it. But it was like sometimes I actually have to scale back because I'm like always finding new podcasts. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to this one. Wait, now I'm confused. Where do I go from here? So I always have to make sure that I'm doing the most I can do and using the information the best I can. So I'm a little bit of a personal growth junkie. I think you can see that my passion for this and sharing this information is pretty big, and I really enjoyed sharing it with all of you. What I do is I actually I do go into this a little bit more in depth in some more interactive groups. They're 8-week mastermind groups on this book, as well as one on discovering your dreams. So if anyone is interested in diving a little bit deeper into personal growth, into one of these books, I am forming, they're all groups on Zoom. So I'm forming groups and they last about 8 weeks. I'm forming one now that we're going to start the end of October and run through right before the new year. So it would be trying to start off the new year on the right foot, do some personal growth and development before the new year starts. So if anyone's interested in learning more information, if you want to, Melissa can share your emails with me if that's okay. I can shoot emails to everybody, anybody who's interested with the information on how to join a group and what's entailed in the group. So thank you for having me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How long do you listen to something or read something, like if it doesn't speak to you? Like,
oh, my goodness, I was just talking about this the other day. I stopped. I was listening to, I don't know, it's a book on tidying up. It was a really popular one.
Oh, the Marie Kondo.
Yes. And it just didn't,
Or,
I think it was like the listening to it that I couldn't couldn't get into the actual listening, and I had to stop. And I think somebody said to me, it's more of a workbook. You need to actually like read it. So I have to force myself to stop because I have a really hard time stopping something I started. Like, I need to finish. I did that with my college major. I was like, I need to be a music therapist, but I hated it. I hated playing 12 hours a day. I try to force myself, like, once I get into it for like, and it's just not speaking to me and I don't want to, I'm not passionate about it. It's not, if I listen to it for a little bit and I don't want to go back to it again, I don't go back to it again. Like, it's not something that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to listen to the next part. I don't turn it back on. And that's something I really have to make myself do. So.
yeah, and I think like I really relate to what you said about being a junkie. I mean, I don't think there's ever too much. I know that like, if I'm feeling negative or I'm feeling badly, that's the first thing I go to. I'm like, I need personal development right now. So I pop on a podcast or I pop on an Audible and it gets me back in the right mindset. So I don't know that there's too much.
I think what I think for me, I had one book going in the car, one book going on my phone.
Oh yeah.
Going, and I was like, oh, wow, that's a little, whew.
Yeah.
I need to scale back and figure out like where my direction is, because I've got 3 different total directions going on at the moment. So I think that was where I was at that point.
Yeah.
I think we have someone popped on the chat. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Lisa. I got your email. I'm gonna see if I can copy that. Any other questions or thoughts or? Okay. Well, let me just copy this because I will forget. Yep. I don't know what I just did. Okay, well, I thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight for a little bit. If you have any questions or you want to learn more about it, just let me know, and I'll send you over some information. And Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I already Facebook stalked you.
Okay, perfect. You can
We have a mutual friend.
What?
We have a mutual friend,
Who's that?
Jennifer Grant.
Oh, okay. She's in the Moms Club.
She did my cake smash pictures for my 35th birthday.
Oh my goodness, she does the cutest pictures. I might have seen
Doesn't
those.
she?
She's in Moms Club with me here in Charlton.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, it was the first adult one that she'd ever done. She loved it.
that's so cute. Oh my goodness, that's adorable. I should have done something like that. I didn't have my daughter until I was 35, so I got married at 34 and had my daughter at 35. So
Never seen it.
I have one more question before you go. I'm so annoying.
No, I love questions.
Who is your favorite besides John Maxwell and Rachel Hollis? Like, what's your favorite?
Oh my goodness. Stephen Covey. I love Stephen Covey's stuff. That's one of my absolute favorites. Brendan Burchard.
Oh, yeah.
Love him. Love his stuff. I could probably go on and send you a list, but those are what I've been. And there's a new podcast I've been listening to. Hold on. My friend just sent it to me, and I want to say I know the name of it. I've been listening. I love it. Let me just look it up. It's called The Gold Digger.
Ah.
I love that one.
Let me see if I have that.
The Gold Digger. Okay.
Gold Digger, yeah. Really good one.
Isn't that Melanie Mitchell's?
Is that
No, hers is Women Inspiring Women. I love hers.
her?
Love.
Trying to like get her name, and I actually turned on an episode. Let's see.
I mean, like, I feel like she's really, well, I guess she's not Beachbody focused, but I really love hers.
Gold Digger is Jenna Kutcher.
Jenna Kutcher. Yep.
Yeah.
Gold, oh, okay.
Gold Digger, yeah.
Sorry, I had to turn my video off because I had to plug in my iPad and I also have headphones in, so I didn't want you guys to just be looking at like
I see your legs.
it's like in such an awkward position. So that's why I turned my video off. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
So we didn't see your crotch. Okay, I'm going to turn the
Amazing.
recording off. Whatever.